The 10 most impressive Christmas canvas. Number 10. The Adoration of the Shepherds. Giorgione. Around 1500. Giorgione, one of the initiators of the 16th century Venetian school, painted around 1500 his Adoration of the Shepherds, also known as the Allendale Nativity. The painting displays the distinctive characteristics of the Venetian style, the subtle use of light, the harmonious integration of the landscape, and the search for a poetic atmosphere. The Holy Family is set in a natural setting, with gentle hills, trees, and a serene sky, while the shepherds bow in silent respect. The painter uses a delicate brushstroke and blends the contours, creating a fluid transition between the figures and the background. The color palette is rich in nuances, with greens, blues, and browns evoking a lyrical atmosphere. Giorgione does not focus on narrative anecdote, but on silent emotion, on the suggestion of divine presence through chromatic harmony and the soft diffusion of light. This adoration, devoid of superfluous ornamentation, stands out for its lyricism and its emphasis on contemplation. The formal simplicity and profound visual musicality make the canvas a paradigmatic example of Venetian sensibility, which understood the sacred act as an intimate dialogue between nature, spirit, and light. Number 9. The Adoration of the Shepherds. Domenico Ghirlandaio, 1485. Domenico Ghirlandaio, a Florentine master of the Quattrocento, painted around 1485 the Adoration of the Shepherds for the high altar of the Sassetti Chapel in the Church of Santa Trinita, Florence. This work integrates Christian tradition with the aesthetic refinement of the Renaissance. The composition focuses on the Holy Family, with the child Jesus placed on the ground, while the Virgin and Saint Joseph contemplate him with serene adoration. Around them, the shepherds approach with humility, displaying honest expressions and simple devotion. Ghirlandaio stands out for his ability to combine compositional rigor, solidity of figures, and detail in the vestments, fusing naturalism with the linear sensibility characteristic of his time. The open and bright background landscape frames the figures and places them in a harmonious setting, underlining the religious message with earthly beauty. The clear and uniform light gives the scene an atmosphere of serenity, avoiding drama and highlighting the human nobility of the characters. Through precision in drawing, balanced composition, and soft coloring, Ghirlandaio elevates a biblical episode to an aesthetic and spiritual experience at the same time. The result is a work that invites contemplation, reflecting the Renaissance ideal that divine truth can be expressed through harmony, measure, and order of representation. Number 8. The Adoration of the Magi. Gentile da Fabriano, 1423. The Adoration of the Magi, that Gentile da Fabriano painted in 1423 for the Strozzi family, is one of the most emblematic works of the International Gothic style in Florence. The panel, richly decorated with gold leaf, shows the procession of the Magi towards the child Jesus, surrounded by a multitude of characters, animals, and exquisite details. The scene is a display of luxury, color, and refinement, with sumptuous clothing, elegant expressions, and a festive atmosphere. Gentile stands out for his meticulousness and the fineness of his line. Each figure is drawn with care, each texture is clearly seen. The light radiates from the golden background, unifying the whole in an unreal and sacred atmosphere. In addition, the succession of narrative scenes, such as the miniature landscapes in the background, contribute to a continuous reading of the gospel story. This adoration transcends the literality of the biblical event, showing it as a courtly and sublime event. The work synthesizes the transition between the medieval world, with its taste for ornamentation and preciosity, and the new Renaissance sensibility, which would soon seek greater realism. The sumptuousness of the ensemble does not impede devotion. Through material splendor, Gentile da Fabriano celebrates the divine miracle, making adoration a dazzling visual experience. Number 7. The Nativity, Giotto, close between 1303 and 1305. The Nativity that Giotto included in the cycle of frescoes in the Scrovegni Chapel in Padua around 1303–05 was a milestone in Western art. Giotto breaks with the conventions of the Byzantine and earlier Gothic styles, showing a coherent space, figures with volume, and a natural interaction between the characters. In the scene, the Virgin leans tenderly over the child, while Saint Joseph, pensive, stands to one side. The angels and the shepherds participate with sober gestures, revealing contained human emotions. The fresco painting, with soft colors and the almost total elimination of the gold background, brings the sacred event closer to the viewer. Giotto uses light and shadow to model the volumes, giving the figures a three-dimensional presence. The stable, small and stable, reinforces the credibility of the story, while the sparse landscape helps to focus attention on the intimacy of the moment. This nativity marks the beginning of the path towards the Renaissance. Giotto humanizes the scene, giving it a psychological and emotional dimension never seen before. Through his formal innovation, the painter makes the biblical story a close, accessible, and profound event. Number 6. The Annunciation, Fra Angelico, between 1437 and 1446. Fra Angelico painted several Annunciations, but the most famous is the one that decorates one of the corridors of the convent of San Marco in Florence, made between 1437 and 1446. In this work, the Virgin Mary and the angel Gabriel meet in a serene cloister, bathed in a clear light. The columns and arches, represented with a coherent perspective, frame the divine event, integrating the architectural space with the sacred scene. The delicate and clean chromatic palette reinforces the spiritual atmosphere, while the expressions of Mary and Gabriel exude humility, reverence, and peace. Fra Angelico moves away from narrative complexity. There are no superfluous elements, the gesture is minimal, and silence seems to envelop the figures. Each line is clear, each form is perfectly harmonized. This Annunciation reflects the fusion between religious devotion and the intellectual rigor of the nascent Renaissance. Fra Angelico uses Renaissance perspective and clarity, but without losing the contemplative spirituality of Gothic art. The result is an image that invites prayer, emphasizing the purity and mystery of the moment when the divine bursts into earthly life. Number 5. The Adoration of the Magi, Peter Paul Rubens, between 1609 and 1610. Peter Paul Rubens, a Flemish Baroque painter, interpreted the Adoration of the Magi between 1609 and 1610 in a dynamic, opulent, and theatrical style. The scene is populated by characters, the three wise men with their rich clothing, their pages and entourages, and the Holy Family in the middle of a crowd. Rubens employs a complex composition in which diagonals and curved lines generate constant movement, underlined by vibrant light that highlights deep reds, golds, and blues. Unlike the serene interpretations of the Renaissance, Rubens chooses exuberance, broad gestures, and overwhelming emotion. The faces show wonder, admiration, and joy, while the Christ child, the focus of the event, is illuminated with a supernatural glow. The loose and energetic brushstrokes contribute to the feeling of vitality. This Baroque approach seeks to impact the viewer, to move him and immerse him in the scene. Rubens' adoration is not only an act of faith, but also a grandiose spectacle where the sacred and the human come together in a chromatic feast and a majestic staging. Number 4. The Adoration of the Shepherds. El Greco. Between 1612 and 1614. Towards the end of his life, between 1612 and 1614, El Greco painted The Adoration of the Shepherds for his own tomb in the convent of Santo Domingo del Antiguo in Toledo. This work condenses his mature style, elongated figures, vibrant colors, and expressive lighting effects. In the scene, the Holy Family and the shepherds gather around the child, whose light illuminates their faces, generating dramatic contrasts between light and dark. El Greco emphasizes the verticality of the compositions, with ascending gestures and a sense of spiritual dynamism. The intense colors, deep blues, bright reds, luminous yellows, produce a mystical atmosphere. The loose, impasto brushstrokes reinforce the visionary character of the image, distancing it from strict naturalism. Here, the Nativity is not an everyday occurrence, but a transcendent event that connects the earthly with the divine. This adoration exemplifies the originality of El Greco, who combines his Byzantine heritage, the influence of Mannerism and Counter-Reformation spirituality. The work invites inner contemplation and the elevation of the spirit, highlighting the mystical dimension of the birth of Christ. Number 3. The Adoration of the Shepherds. Caravaggio, 1609. Caravaggio, a master of chiaroscuro, painted The Adoration of the Shepherds in 1609, probably during his stay in Messina. The scene, stripped of any idealization, places the Holy Family in a humble and dark environment, where the focal light falls on the child, illuminating the weathered faces and simple clothing of the shepherds. Caravaggio rejects divine rhetoric and presents the birth as a real, tangible event, in which the figures seem taken from everyday life. The arrangement is sober and direct: Mary, exhausted and pensive, Saint Joseph old, and the shepherds rough and silent. The powerful light models the bodies with volume and realism, while suggesting the spiritual dimension of the moment. The chiaroscuro underlines the tension between the darkness of the world and the clarity provided by the child. This adoration is an example of the Caravaggist style: emotional, dramatic, and sincere. Caravaggio makes the miracle accessible, showing it in its rawness and humanity. Devotion is expressed in the silence, humility, and closeness of the figures, inviting us to feel the intensity of faith through sensory experience. Number 2. The Adoration of the Magi. Sandro Botticelli. Between 1475 and 1476. Sandro Botticelli painted a famous Adoration of the Magi in 1475–76, commissioned by the Medici family. This work places the Gospel scene in a Florentine setting, with classical ruins and a group of contemporary figures. Among the attendees, portraits of members of the Medici family, intellectuals, and illustrious figures of the time can be seen. The Holy Family occupies the center, while a rich human tapestry unfolds around it. Botticelli employs an elegant line, precise contours, and a clear color palette, reflecting the refinement of the Florentine Quattrocento. The light is soft, subtly highlighting the faces and clothing. The scene takes on a political and cultural significance. The Medici appear as guarantors of order, piety, and the artistic splendor of the city. The adoration thus becomes an aesthetic and symbolic spectacle, fusing Christian spirituality with the earthly grandeur of Florence. The work integrates devotion, portraiture and the vindication of civic power, anticipating the influence that Botticelli would exert on later art. In this way, the adoration is elevated to the category of a historical, cultural, and religious event, uniting the sacred past with the humanist present. Number 1. The Adoration of the Magi. Leonardo da Vinci. Between 1481 and 1482. In 1481 to 82, Leonardo da Vinci began his Adoration of the Magi, a painting that remained unfinished but represents a crucial point in his artistic evolution. The work shows the Virgin and Child in the center, surrounded by the Magi, horses, moving figures, and ruined architecture in the background. Although the painting is still in its sketch state, the complex composition and dynamism of the lines that converge toward the central axis can be appreciated, giving the scene an organic movement. Leonardo investigates aerial perspective and light gradation, generating an ethereal atmosphere where the figures merge with the environment. His interest in anatomy and psychological expression can be seen in the gestures and postures of the characters, who seem to engage in emotional dialogue. The lack of finishing allows us to see Leonardo's creative process, the use of strokes to define volumes and attitudes, and his constant search for harmony. This adoration embodies the transition to the High Renaissance, pointing the way towards a more complex representation of reality, where the divine and the human intertwine in a space marked by doubt, discovery, and visual research. Leonardo's unfinished work continues to fascinate with its latent potential and the audacity of its conception. Thank you for watching our video. Subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. Give it a like, comment your thoughts, and share this video with your friends and family.